Yeah, no, you bring up a very interesting point in terms of like how do you assess skills coming here, right? But even the stories that you're talking about over here, Brittany, you talked about the daughter coming and seeing, and therefore seeing what's possible. The other aspect of it is talking about the inclusivity, right? And Brittany, you touched about this remote working environment. And Samara, I know you talked about this, and I've used this story multiple times because it seems so simple yet so powerful, which is here on a Zoom call, somebody unmuted their mic and then muted it back again before she or he could actually say something. But that's a signal to whoever's running the meeting saying that they probably had something to say, but they couldn't find the right opportunity to open their mouth. And therefore, you need to give them that space to open up either during the meeting at the end of it or after the fact, right? So talk a little bit, Ismail, maybe start with you since that's something you talked about, is what are the other things when we talk about inclusivity, right? It is more than just just talking about, hey, we should make everybody feel loved and included. It's like things like you're doing, and what examples do you have out there that others can start implementing literally right now, and saying it's not somebody else's issue, it's your issue and our issue, and let's start doing it today.
Yeah, and well, the context behind that muting and unmuting is that I talk so much, people can't get a word in, so I can see them unmute. Like I just want to say something. No, but on a serious note, yeah, I want people to be able to. So even if it's at the end of the meeting, did everybody get out what they needed to say? Right? Does anybody have anything that they, would like to bring up? Otherwise, ping me afterwards, and we can dig into it. The other way is kind of before we start including and accepting everything what people say. I like to be extra vulnerable and sort of open with the team to kind of set the pace as to what you can share, what you can feel free to share. And I think I mentioned this on a podcast with Brittany and Lori before, but even talking about like my therapist, what I'm learning about mental health, posting pictures of my family and my dogs, we start to see people opening up about their lives and sharing pictures about their family and learning more about them. So that's another technique that I've used in the past as well.
So I will take this. I think being very intentional about being inclusive is really important, to the point of like in the hiring phase. So I'm going to give this question away. I always ask towards the end. So if you come and ever interview with me, you're going to get asked this question. I usually ask, like, what makes you you? What makes you different from everyone else? And I want to know something that I'm not going to see on your resume. And I think like what they share is just so people take that question 100 different ways. And it's so great to hear about them, because I know a lot of times, especially in the US, we're kind of cuffed around what we can ask and what we can't ask, but we can allow them to share any information that they want to. And so, after work activities are brought up, their families are brought up, their culture is brought up, things that like these personal things that they care about that they just want to share with you are brought out. And that helps me start to understand, is this something that I don't have on my team? Is this person bringing something extra to my team that we can include? Because a lot of times you don't get that unless it's volunteered to you. And so like, I'm always looking for, how do we add to the team? Because I do want to keep a good culture, but that culture doesn't necessarily have to be the same culture. It needs to be a healthy culture, one that's looking from all different aspects. And so like, what is this person bringing to the table that we don't have? So usually that's always a question that one of the last questions that I end the interview with is, what makes you you?
I think your culture too needs to change with your maturity, right? So that's definitely a good point to always be checking in on that for sure. Yeah, that's good.
So one of the things I know this is all over social media when it comes to interviewing and getting ghosted, right? And I've seen this happen over and over again with candidates who are trying to break in, and they've done 40 interviews, 50 interviews, again, depression because they're not getting any feedback. they don't know. And again, Brittany, what you said is brilliant in terms of understanding who they are. But is as an industry where we have this quote unquote talent gap, right? I mean, there's a great resignation, and I mean, I have CISOs of mine have literally, after the recording ends, we talk about, okay, how many people are they losing? Where do they get the talent from? But and yet it seems like such a small thing to do is to spend that extra 5 minutes after a candidate has gone through an interview process and give him or her the feedback saying, hey, this is how you were projected. How do we get past that to actually become more human and let them, maybe like you were saying, Laurie, I mean, maybe they have a better chance at some other organization and they can do better in the next interview, provided they know what the impression that they gave was. So any thoughts on how we can improve as an industry to help these people through that process?
That's a great point. I know in the interviews I do that's always part of it. And we actually, I would say, spend even more time talking about the people that don't get the job to make sure that we're giving them that really constructive feedback. The person that got the job wins, right? So they probably don't want, they're not as interested in the feedback because they know that they kind of hit it out of the park. So we just had an interview for a director position, and it was internal candidates that went through it, but we did spend a good amount of time making sure that we were getting feedback to the folks that didn't get the role. Now, externally, that does take more time if you've taken a lot of folks through it, but it's important to us. I'll let Samara and Brittany talk through that a little bit more, because I know you've all had a lot of interviews that you've been doing recently. So I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, I can touch on this in a couple ways, actually. So from the applicant side, right? I think the best way to find a job or to find an interview is to go through a connect of yours, right? So when you go through a connect of yours, that connect has a relationship with the person they sent you to, right? It's the best way to get that feedback loop, because these people don't want to lose that reputation that they have with one another, right? So that's on the applicant side. Not everybody can do that. I get that. On our side, that is probably one of the bigger reasons why I recruit so heavily myself. So Ashwin, you talked about how, it was kind of crazy that I had reached out and said, if you're interested, reach out directly to me, right? And I'm going to get back to everybody, unless you just say, hey, how's it going, right? Like give me some context. But I've already had people, be rejected throughout our process, and they hit me back and were like, I got rejected for this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, let's keep in touch. I'm always sharing other jobs. Like I'll help you any way I can, essentially. But that's how I feel like I can do my part. Because in the recruiting process, right, there are certain rules and all of this stuff that, we don't have a lot of control over.
So for me, I've definitely had interviews where, generally my structure is, we get to learn a little bit about each other, and then we have kind of this question phase, and then, they have a lot of time where they can ask me questions too. And I've had applicants before at the end of that session take the last 5 minutes and say, after talking to me, is there anything that you feel that I'm not a good fit for, or that I could learn more about, or like, and getting that feedback right away. And I think that that's great. For me, as the person that's interviewing, puts me on the hot seat. But so they will get immediate feedback, but I would tell you, you would probably get better feedback from me if you let me sit down, collect my thoughts, and then get back to you. So I would encourage people to be bold. And after that interview is done, or the cards have fallen where they are, to find those people on social media and reach out and just say like, hey, I interviewed, I didn't get the spot or whatever. How could I do better? What should I be learning more? Where did you see my gaps? Because I think it shows a bit of humility. And it shows that you're wanting to grow. And because you did that, I will tell you, I will probably remember you the next time something comes up, because I know that you're asking, I know that you're growing, and I know that you're asking for that feedback for a reason. So I would encourage people to be bold and reach out afterwards and say like, hey, can you give me some feedback?
Wow. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, from the applicant's perspective, you get an idea of whether you would have liked to work for that manager in the first place, right? So there's an opportunity on both sides to keep that relationship alive.
And again, I think that's something you guys touched upon, which isn't talked about much, right? Which is, I mean, you're going through the process, and it's a point in time, right? And suppose, I mean, like you were talking about, I think it was Ace, right? He mentioned that to me when I interviewed him, also, right? Talking about the fact that he reached out to you at that point, there wasn't a fit, but then later on he came back. So, I mean, and it's something that is so powerful to be able to build those relationships, regardless of whether you're able to hire that person or whether there was a fit or not, right? So any final thoughts in closing in terms of, we talked about interview, talked about inclusion, any other things that you guys want to share in terms of the how, where people can make the environment more inclusive?
Brittany unmuted. Usually, you want to go first?
I know, me and Samara always like bump heads on who's going to go first. I'm going to let Samara go first.
Well, on this podcast, though, you are not taking all of my ideas, so I appreciate that. Right, and she's not stealing them; they're just in her head, and we have similar heads. So in that, I forgot what I was going to say. So, Brittany, go ahead.
So what I was going to say is, being vulnerable is scary. And a lot of times our differences are scary. And so you hesitate to share those differences that you have, and you hesitate to share something that you may think is weird or different about you. But that's the extra spark that you bring to a team. That's a different perspective that we don't have. And so I would say, I would challenge you to be vulnerable and to put that out there, because what you're going to find is either one, they're going to like you for you, or two, they're not going to like you for you. And that's not a place you want to be. So just, if you get the chance and you get up the courage, be you, and be vulnerable, put it out there.
I remember now. But so mine is more for the hiring manager, I would say. I've been stuck on this saying, like, the 1 minute of preparation equals like 10 minutes of execution or something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but that it's been stuck on me. And every time I've really prepared or done a lot of proactive work, the result has been incredible, So I would just, talk to hiring managers out there and say, do the work. Do something different you haven't done before to get different talent.
Amazing.
And I'd say for leaders out there, like I mentioned, the criminals are recruiting talent in every possible way they can, and with diverse backgrounds, and training them and keeping the conversations going. I'm sure if they haven't gone to the dark side, so why aren't we doing the same thing? So that would be my guidance to all my peers out in the industry.
Yeah, awesome. Again, thank you, all three of you, for your time. Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, Brittany. And thanks, Samara, for joining me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great meeting you.